What if I told you that some of the calmest family cars of the 1960s were faster than many famous muscle cars? Cars designed to carry kids, luggage, and grocery bags. Long, quiet wagons with wood paneling and a respectable look. The kind of vehicle no one looked at twice at a stoplight. And yet, when the light turned green, they left behind cars that had actually been built to run. Forgotten wagons, harmless at first glance, and humiliating on the street. Today we're talking about those wagons, cars that looked slow, but weren't. Respectable family haulers that secretly embarrass muscle cars. 1966 to 1968 Chevrolet Caprice. If someone had told you in 1967 that a luxury wagon could embarrass muscle cars on the street, you probably would have laughed, and yet, here was the Caprice. At first glance, it was the perfect car for an upper-middle-class family. Long, elegant, quiet, with wood paneling and a presence that communicated respect, not speed. Nothing about its design suggested danger. It was exactly the kind of car nobody lined up against at a red light. That was the mistake. Because Chevrolet allowed something that sounds almost insane today. Beneath that massive hood, the Caprice wagon could be ordered with the RPOL 72, a 427 cubic inch big block V8, producing over 425 horsepower. The very same engine found in some of the most radical Corvettes of the era, installed in a family wagon. In a straight line, that changed everything. Despite its size and weight, a properly equipped 427 Caprice could sprint from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just over 6 seconds, numbers that made many official muscle cars uncomfortable. And it did it without excessive noise, without theatrics, almost without warning. The experience was what made it unsettling. While other cars shouted performance, the Caprice simply surged forward with relentless force. The big block torque made the car seem to ignore its own mass. It was speed delivered politely, which somehow made it even more humiliating. A key detail is that very few buyers checked that box at the dealership. The combination was expensive, extreme, and completely illogical for a wagon. That's exactly why today these Caprices are true unicorns, real sleepers, not internet myths. In today's collector market, a documented big block Chevrolet Caprice wagon can easily exceed $90,000 to $150,000, depending on condition and originality. Not because it was beautiful, not because it was practical, but because it represents one of Detroit's most delicious mistakes. 1965 Pontiac Catalina Safari. If the Caprice was Chevrolet's quiet mistake, the Safari was Pontiac's, but with a slightly more defiant attitude. At first glance, it looked exactly like what a mid-60s wagon was supposed to be. Big, elegant, well-proportioned, clearly built for family duty and long road trips. No aggressive graphics, no hood scoops, nothing screaming performance. It was respectable, calm, predictable, and that was the deception. Pontiac allowed the Catalina Safari to be equipped with engines that made very little logical sense in a wagon. From the well-known 389 V8 to the truly serious 421 cubic inch engine, capable of producing over 360 horsepower depending on configuration. In 1965, those numbers already belonged to respected muscle car territory. In practice, that made the Safari deeply uncomfortable for other drivers. Despite its size, it could run from 0 to 60 miles per hour in roughly the 6 to 6.5 second range. Hard to believe for a car with a roof rack and family car looks. And like the Caprice, it did it without drama. Torque was the secret. It didn't need to rev high or sound strained. It simply pushed forward with steady authority, making its weight and dimensions seem to disappear. While other cars needed noise to feel fast, the Catalina moved with an unsettling calm. An important point is that Pontiac already had a performance reputation. But nobody associated that reputation with a wagon. That's why the Safari worked so perfectly as a sleeper. It wasn't underestimated because it was slow. It was underestimated because it was a family car. Today, a well-preserved 1965 Pontiac Catalina Safari typically falls between $45,000 and $80,000, with big engine, properly documented examples commanding even higher prices. It wasn't designed to embarrass anyone, but it did. simply by being in the wrong place with the wrong engine. 1968 to 1969. Oldsmobile Vista Cruiser. This wagon fooled people before it even started. The Vista Cruiser is remembered for one defining feature: its raised panoramic roof, designed to bring more light, more space, and an almost living room-like atmosphere to the cabin. It was the perfect car for modern families, long road trips, and absolute comfort. Visually, it looked more like a rolling lounge than anything remotely connected to speed. And that was the trick. Because in 1968 and 1969, Oldsmobile allowed something that completely rewrote the Vista Cruiser's story. Under the hood, it could hide the 400 high output, an engine closely related to the one used in the legendary 442, capable of producing over 360 horsepower. A muscle car engine, installed in a wagon with panoramic windows and a harmless appearance. On the street, that translated into something deeply unsettling. Despite its size, the Vista Cruiser could sprint from 0 to 60 miles per hour in roughly 6.5 seconds, numbers that challenged many cars marketed as sports models. And it did it without excessive noise, without theatrics, without warning. The experience bordered on dangerous. The car never felt strained. The suspension was comfortable, the cabin quiet, and acceleration arrived so smoothly that many drivers didn't realize how fast they were going until they glanced at the speedometer. It was a sleeper in the purest sense of the word. A key detail is that very few Vista Cruisers were configured this way. Most were sold as normal family wagons. That's exactly why properly documented high-output V8 versions are extremely sought after today, and increasingly difficult to find. In today's collector market, a late 60s Oldsmobile Vista Cruiser typically ranges between $40,000 and $75,000, but examples equipped with the 400HO can climb well beyond that figure. Now, I want your opinion. Which is more dangerous, a sleeper that looks aggressive, or one like this that appears completely harmless? Let me know in the comments, because the next car takes this idea even further, with an even more family-friendly image. 1966 to 1969, Dodge Monaco. If there was ever a wagon designed so no one would take it seriously, this was it. The Monaco looked like the ultimate suburban dad car, big, square, comfortable, with conservative styling and completely predictable presence. Nothing about its design hinted at speed. It was the kind of vehicle that blended perfectly into traffic, and that made it perfect. Because Dodge decided to offer something in this wagon that made absolutely no visual sense. The 440 V8, a big block capable of delivering around 350 horsepower, the same engine-pushing Chargers and other muscle cars from the brand, now hidden beneath the hood of a massive, quiet wagon. In a straight line, the result was shocking. Despite its size, it could launch from 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 6 seconds. A brutal number for a nearly 2-ton family car. But what truly unsettled people wasn't the acceleration. It was how effortlessly it delivered it. No drama, no mechanical screaming, just relentless, crushing thrust. The massive torque of the 440 made the car surge forward as if it were ignoring its own weight. While other cars needed to look fast to be fast, the Monaco simply was. And by the time someone realized it, it was already too late. A crucial detail is that Dodge offered this configuration almost casually, without heavily promoting it. Most buyers had no idea they were checking the box for one of the most serious sleepers of the entire decade. Today, a well-preserved 1969 Dodge Monaco station wagon typically sits between $35,000 and $65,000, with documented big block examples commanding higher prices thanks to their rarity and their brutal visual contradiction. A massive wagon, a completely harmless image, and a heart capable of humiliating cars that bragged about their muscle. 1967 Ford Country Squire. This is probably the wagon no one would ever take seriously at a stoplight. The Country Squire is the archetype of the American family car. Wood paneling, enormous proportions, soft suspension, and an image directly associated with vacations, kids, and endless highways. For most people, it was as far from performance as a car could possibly get. And yet, Ford crossed a dangerous line once again. Because this wagon could be ordered with engines that were anything but family-friendly, including the 428 V8, a power plant engineered to deliver silent violence. With output around 345 horsepower, the Country Squire could hit 0 to 60 miles per hour in roughly 6.5 seconds, putting serious pressure on many real muscle cars. What made it unsettling was the way it did it. It didn't look fast, it didn't sound aggressive, it didn't feel tense. The enormous torque allowed the wagon to surge forward with almost insulting ease. While other cars demanded constant attention, the Country Squire let you accelerate hard with a sense of total control, as if speed were natural, not forced. This became one of the most effective sleepers of its era precisely because of its reputation. Nobody expected anything from it, nobody respected it, and that made it the perfect trap for anyone who confused appearance with performance. Today, a well-maintained 1967 Ford Country Squire typically ranges from $40,000 to $75,000, with documented big block versions becoming increasingly desirable among collectors who understand the value of this contradiction. 1969 to 1970, Plymouth Suburban. If there was ever a wagon designed to make you misjudge it, this was the one. At a glance, it looked like the perfect vehicle to disappear into traffic. Long, boxy, wrapped in wood paneling, and styled with absolute conservatism. Nothing about it suggested urgency, aggression, or even the slightest sporting intent. It was the kind of wagon you assumed was slow, without thinking twice. And that was the problem, because Plymouth allowed this wagon to be equipped with the Commando 440, a big block V8 producing around 375 horsepower, numbers that placed it squarely in muscle car territory. An engine built to deliver brute force, now hidden beneath the hood of a family car that looked incapable of hurting anything. In practice, the result was devastating. Despite its size, the Sport Suburban could sprint from 0 to 60 miles per hour in roughly 6 seconds. An almost absurd figure for a wagon of this kind. And like the other sleepers on this list, it did it without excessive noise or theatrics. The power delivery was pure humiliation. Massive torque pushed the car forward with insulting ease, especially in short bursts of acceleration. Many lighter muscle cars simply couldn't react in time. By the moment the other driver realized what was happening, the wagon was already ahead. This is one of those cases where the combination was so illogical that almost no one ordered it. Very few buyers checked the box for the 440 in a family wagon. That's what makes these Plymouths true sleepers today. Not modern reinterpretations or exaggerated legends, but genuine factory contradictions. In today's collector market, a 1969 Plymouth Sport Suburban wagon typically ranges between $35,000 and $65,000, but documented big block examples can climb well beyond that, thanks to their extreme rarity. Now, I want your opinion. Do you think this kind of sleeper is more humiliating than a classic muscle car? Or is part of the charm precisely the fact that no one saw it coming? Let me know in the comments, because the next wagon shifts the perspective once again, and does it through absolute discretion. 1968 to 1969, Chevrolet Kingswood Estate. This is the exact definition of a pure sleeper. It looked like the most generic vehicle imaginable within Chevrolet's lineup. A large wagon, proper, restrained, with no sporting pretensions, no aggressive image, and no visual cues hinting at performance. It was, quite literally, the catalog family car. And that complete normalcy was its best camouflage, because as part of Chevrolet's full-size range, the Kingswood could be ordered with large V8 engines, including big block options capable of producing over 400 horsepower in certain configurations. None of this was heavily advertised. Nothing was highlighted. It was simply there, for those who knew what to ask for. On the street, that made the Kingswood a dangerous anomaly. It accelerated with unexpected authority, especially at mid-range speeds where torque made its size seem irrelevant. It didn't need explosive launches, it just needed to push, and when it did, it pushed hard. What made it truly humiliating was that nobody saw it coming. It had no reputation, no aura of speed, no performance image. It was exactly the type of vehicle a muscle car driver would underestimate without hesitation. And many times, that mistake was costly. Another key factor is how rare powerful examples have become. Most Kingswoods lived ordinary lives as family haulers and gradually disappeared. The few that survived with large engines and proper documentation are now genuine hidden gems. In today's market, a late 60s Chevrolet Kingswood estate typically falls between $30,000 and $60,000, with well-preserved big block examples commanding higher prices. It wasn't a flashy mistake. It wasn't a bold experiment. It was something far more dangerous. A car so normal that no one suspected how fast it could really be. 1966 to 1967, Buick Sport Wagon. This wagon played a completely different game. Not the game of invisibility, but the game of making elegance look slow. The Buick Sport Wagon immediately stood out for its distinctive design, a sleek profile, clean lines, and most notably, that raised rear roof with expansive glass panels that gave it an almost European character. It didn't look heavy or clumsy. It looked refined, intentional, civilized. And that led many people to make the worst possible assumption for a sleeper, that it was slow. Buick, however, saw things differently. Under the hood, the sport wagon could be equipped with 400 cubic inch V8 engines, producing around 325 horsepower. It wasn't a loud or explosive motor. It was built for strong, confident thrust, delivering torque in a way that moved the car with surprising ease. In real-world driving, the sport wagon wasn't about dramatic launches. Its strength lived elsewhere: mid-range acceleration, effortless passing, and the constant sensation that the car always had more to give. On the highway, it could quietly pull away from many muscle cars that relied more on theatrics than on usable power. What makes it fascinating is that its design worked both against it and for it. No one saw it as a threat. It was too attractive, too proper, too elegant to be fast. And precisely because of that, it performed perfectly as a sleeper. Being an intermediate wagon rather than a full-size model also meant less weight, allowing that V8 to feel even stronger than expected. It didn't need exaggeration. It simply delivered. Today, a well-preserved mid-60s Buick Sport Wagon typically ranges between $35,000 and $65,000. 1969 Chrysler Town and Country. If there was ever a wagon no one dared to challenge, it was this one. Not because it looked fast, but because it looked untouchable. The Town and Country represented the highest expression of American family luxury: large, imposing, wrapped in perfectly integrated wood paneling and carrying an almost institutional presence. It didn't look like a car built to compete. It looked like the car of someone important, and paradoxically, that made it even more dangerous as a sleeper, because Chrysler crossed a very clear line. Beneath that massive hood, buyers could spec the 440 V8, including the 440 TNT, producing roughly 350 horsepower. An engine designed to move big, aggressive muscle cars, now hidden inside a luxury wagon that was silent, comfortable, and effortlessly composed. On the street, the outcome was deeply disorienting. Despite its size and weight, the Town and Country could sprint from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just over 6 seconds. Absurd numbers for a vehicle that seemed engineered exclusively for long-distance cruising. One key detail is that this configuration was never the focus of marketing. No one walked into a dealership thinking about performance when ordering a Town and Country. That's exactly why properly equipped examples are extremely rare today, sought after by collectors who appreciate the perfection of this contradiction. In today's market, a well-kept late 60s Chrysler Town and Country typically falls between $50,000 and $90,000, with documented 440 cars commanding even higher prices. It wasn't designed to humiliate muscle cars. It was designed to travel in elegance, and precisely because of that, it became one of the most effective sleepers of the entire decade. After seeing all these wagons, one thing becomes very clear. In the 1960s, speed didn't always come with racing stripes, hood scoops, or intimidating names. Sometimes it hid beneath wood paneling, plush seats, and a family-friendly image that practically invited underestimation. These wagons didn't want to be muscle cars. They weren't chasing fame. They weren't trying to impress. And precisely because of that, they were devastatingly effective at humiliating cars that proudly advertised their performance. Now, I want to hear from you. Which of these sleeper wagons do you think was the most dangerous? The silent luxury cruiser, the seemingly boring family hauler, or the one no one would ever take seriously at a stoplight? Tell me in the comments. That's where these stories stay alive. And if you enjoyed discovering this hidden side of American wagons, I highly recommend watching the video now appearing on your screen. There, we explore the most beautiful wagons of the 1960s, models that weren't just quietly fast, but that also defined the elegance of an entire decade. Click and keep traveling with us through the golden age of the American automobile. See you in the next video.